Right, let's move on then. So, Richard, what is your bad point?
Right, so let me just see what I sent you first of all, just to make sure, since I don't want to break from it. Yes, because I'm doing it on an annual basis, unlike anyone else here. Yeah, I thought the bad was the way that the CSGO as a product is sort of massively scaled down over the course of the year, under the guise of COVID restrictions, which is a part of it, obviously, but also as well, I think a lot of tournament organizers have kind of like really welcomed having that as an excuse, and you know, I think there's definitely been cynical parties that have used the current ongoing situation in relation to the pandemic to essentially justify business decisions that they already wanted to make anyway and just needed the excuse. That was the key component in the final decision. I look at like the production in CSGO and you compare it to like, you know, we outside of Blast, we don't really have anything that's comparable to like LEC or LCS. I mean, you know, some aspects of what you're doing at the moment, like Maui with the We Play Academy League, they've got some nice like augmented reality and it's very clean broadcast. But in general, there isn't a like ever since. I mean, it's almost been kind of downhill since E-League to a certain degree. But I think, like, I look at the ESL product as it is now, and the changes they've made, and how since they've pivoted to this like online and virtual studio setup they've got, and it just feels cheap. And when you throw into it that there's no LAN, no crowds, it's like you can understand why some people might have like concerns about where CSGO's heading as an esports product, especially with the absent father of Valve, who just don't give a fuck, but do say they give a fuck, but then don't do anything that would make you think they give a fuck. So, yeah, I think that it's quite sad to see where we're at, because it really feels the last 2 years we've gone backwards as opposed to forwards, when at best, you know, other products are sort of, at least they've stagnated and stayed the same. You know, but I mean, there's even parts like of like fucked up dead esports like Overwatch, where you look at their broadcast and you go, actually, some of that looks better than what we're than what we're doing in CS:GO right now. It's fucking shocking when you think about it like that. So that for me has definitely been a real bad development across 2021.
I would have to agree. I don't think I could really. I started really detesting the whole use of just putting one center stage prop like a desk and then just having a giant green screen behind people. I think that look is really tired already. I think that I'm glad you shouted out WePlay, because they do such a great job with their set design, and they even switched up event to event. I mean, so I think that. If they it's been a great initiative all round, honestly. I mean, you know, I could have easily picked that as one of the good for the whole year, because having a place where academy teams are sort of validated and developing talent is sort of rewarded. I don't know how they do it fiscally, but you know, when you consider it wasn't that long ago, everyone was getting rid of their academy teams because you were being told they could never enter into a competition anyway. Right. You know, actually what WePlay have done is really astounding, and I hope it starts to get the viewership and the recognition it deserves, because it's a good idea with a good broadcast attached to it.
I had a hilarious tweet, by the way, where when I made a point about the fact that, like, it's good that, you know, players from the academy teams are going to top 20 teams, even though, by the way, the guy's factually wrong, there's way more than this. A guy actually said, and this is why we cannot have nice things in CS, he goes, what do you mean there's only 3 players have even gone to top 20 teams from academy teams? Like, oh, only 3? Wow. Only 3. Well... Nothing really, is it?
Just the lack of history there. Yeah.
For like almost nothing. For like, fucking give me a break. You can't have nice things, Murray. Come on then, what's your thought?
I mean, back to kind of Richard's initial point. Yeah, I think that it's just the lack of innovation is kind of, I'd say, spurred by the fact that ESL and Blast, you know, they're owning so much of the calendar that an organization like WePlay would want more space, more time. But the only time that orgs like Flashpoint or WePlay or anyone can get their foot in the door with what they would want in terms of team quality for their tournaments is when it's something like an RMR event. Like that is the little push that Valve gives smaller TOs to give them a chance to show what they're made of. And so I really just wish that, the calendar just weren't set as it was, because it leads to complacency in the kind of monopoly that ESL and Blast have. They can rest on their laurels a lot, but the TOs that are knocking at the door, like We Play, I mean, they just never get a chance, because the opportunity that We Play gets is to just create something entirely new to show that, yes, like, we can put on a great event. But it's an academy league, so it's never because the teams and the star players really are what drive the viewership. It's never going to get the attention that it does deserve in terms of its production quality.
Yeah, the killer for me is that, unfortunately, I mean, it'll sound weird because it's a counterintuitive way to say it, but unfortunately, the viewership was pretty much as good, if not better, online. So it means that if you are a tournament organizer and you were losing money running all these LANs, it's just obvious. You go, right, we'll run half the LANs, get the same fucking viewership or better, and even better, and crucially, because everyone has to do everything online. I think if you actually had, like, if ESLs was online and Blast the next week was online, maybe that would hit the viewership. But even then, like, I still think there's times when the costs would make more sense, because remember, these companies are all losing money and or burning through VC money / investor money. So unfortunately, they're all sort of painted into a corner. So I can't blame them, but I totally agree with Richard. I basically think that essentially, funny enough, this mirrors all other industries in the world. It's just a great excuse. It's like that thing, never let a good crisis go to waste. It's just a great excuse to transition to a model that actually you prefer anyway, but if it was under any other circumstances, you would get pushback from. Like, if they just came out 3 years ago and they were like, right, we're going half online, everyone would go, boo, or you're taking esports back in time, like, this is what we were fighting to get away from. You'd even have players who'd say, I haven't played a proper online tournament in years, like, why am I doing, look, but they've gotten away with it because no one can come against it and go, why are we doing this? Because there's a reason that resounds in your fucking head every day you look at a screen that they get away with it for. So I do think that's whack, personally. And then I also personally have a mad, terrible vibe about the way the LAN transition went this year. Like, first of all, I totally agree on the ESL broadcast. ESL broadcasts are really good in the sense that they have the best teams and the tournament format is good. The actual broadcast part is flat as fuck. The broadcast has gone back in time. Like, ESL used to just be the best at doing the sort of by the numbers style of a show, as in, same exact, like, very dry format, but the idea was they had the best talent for the biggest LAN events with the best teams. So you didn't need to do anything innovative if you were ESL. You just knocked it out the park, and people like Counter-Strike, you nailed all the things. The problem in the moment is the talent is pretty lackluster. I think they have. The teams are all great and all the rest of it, but it's like, I don't get the vibe that there's the same hype. And then this is one of the things that's killed it for me, is when you come to these LANs, first of all, unfortunately, we have now learned from the major that, like, let's be real, it's like a studio LAN, as in without a crowd environment, is still better than online, but it's sort of like halfway between a crowd LAN and an online tournament. Before, we were acting like it was like 75 or 80%. I don't know. I feel like it's more like half. Like, I've just seen, like, the teams themselves don't look like they have the same gravitas when they play the match. Like, it doesn't seem like it's as key. You see the performances look a lot closer to the online when it's the studio LAN, whereas you saw at the major that really did have people shook. And unfortunately, just this couldn't be helped, but just the order of the LANs when we got to the LAN period, I think, has killed the hype. Because you had the major bring all the hype up and all these teams, and then every tournament afterwards was like dead teams, like nobody or fucking teams aren't at the tournament, like Gambit just isn't at one of these tournaments. Like, unfortunately, I think that actually killed some of the hype for me. And I'll add in as well, why did it? Here's the thing. I'm supposed to be the purist, right? Normally, what I have to do is go, look, I don't give a fuck about online results, no matter even if you are Gambit or Big or Heroic or whoever. Like, until I see you do it online, it doesn't count for me. Everyone else, though, has been gaslighting me for the last 2 years. Like, no, Thorin, like, this has to count. This is Counter-Strike now. And then when we come to, like, actual actions that would show it, like ranking players in the year, talking about who the best teams are, as far as I can tell, most people have gone throughout online, start with LAN, they're all the best, and then maybe use online as like a decider between, like, this, we've acted like the last, like, literally 3/4 of the year didn't count. That's what most people seem to be doing in the scene. Well, the problem with that is, tie it back into what I said at the beginning of this point. If we're going to have a hybrid online offline circuit, what are we really doing here, guys? Like, we have to actually either admit it or fucking re-hypnotize ourselves that online means something, because online can't just be the break until you have the tournament, because in that world, by the way, you're going to create a scenario where, as much as we all made fun of people like Carrigan going, I need a year for this team, we're a LAN team, really, like, the joke is that's what everyone's going to be able to say. You're going to be able to get dick around and have ninth place finishes for 3 months, because as long as you go to LAN and do well, that'll count, right? So I actually think, unfortunately, some of this stuff has positioned Counter-Strike in a bit of a precarious position. Like, I don't really know what people see as the Counter-Strike circuit at the moment. It's not that satisfying to me. And the idea of going online now with all the new rosters, like, what the fuck? I want to see all these lands. I just saw 4 lands.
And just to clarify the point, like, I mean, we've always historically been pretty sympathetic to tournament organizers not making a lot of money, because we scaled up production, we scaled up costs, we scaled up, you know, it used to be that when you had to go to a LAN event, all of that cost was borne by the organization. That went out fucking years ago, you know? Yes. So when you have this, like, you know, luxury environment, now you're providing hotels, you're providing travel, you're providing all this like lavish stuff, you know, that you would, I don't even think in mainstream sports some of that costs is kind of borne by the.
As far as I know, I'm thinking like tennis, for example, I think you pay everything yourself. Yeah,
exactly right. So, but what's ended up happening is, like, you know, we got to a point where it goes online. So just keep it the same, because you don't have those overheads. So keep your broadcast looking fresh and nice. Do some innovative things. Upscale your production a little bit, but, you know, create some shoulder content. But no, they're not doing that. And in fact, they're actually regressing and going, oh, bloody hell, this COVID stuff's a nightmare. It's like you've already slashed your costs ridiculously, because no one can travel anywhere, no one can compete in person. So, which, by the way, also, the way that it was just framed, there's absolutely no way we could run a bubble. There's no countries we could possibly hold these LAN events in. We just thought that premise was just put out there.
It was never true. It was never true. Like, as far as I know, you could have gone to Sweden the whole time. Yeah, you could have. Or Serbia. Everyone was going to Serbia to play the bloody online tournaments, weren't they?
So you know, we all just accepted that. And to your point as well about the ESL broadcast, you know, I mean, look, I think they're going to have real problems this year. I mean, first of all, I don't like the broadcast overall, because it just doesn't, it never fucking sits still. It's like, right, so when we do desks, right, we want to have debate and we want to have an argument and we want to talk about the topics we want to, you know, we want to get across to the audience. And I want the production to augment what we're saying. So I want the production to bring up the graphics that we talked about in the production meeting and have shit ready and follow our fucking conversation. Because if you in the production truck don't think what we're saying matters, then why the fuck would anyone else, right? But what happens with an ESL broadcast is, you know, the analysts say, so that team won, point. Now here's fucking a DHL like commercial in the middle of the fucking thing. Right, back to you. Now what about this little segment? Here's a clip. All right, okay, and it's just, they're just flying all over the place. Nothing fucking breathes. There's nothing of any substance being talked about. It's really hard to get, even with the best people in the world at the job, it's really hard to get the energy levels high. And also, on top of that, like, who wants to be stuck, like, best will in the world, nobody wants to be stuck anywhere for 60 days, especially now, because you turn up at the hotel and everything's like, yes, welcome to normality, and then you go to sleep and you wake up in the morning, sorry, the apocalypse has happened. You're like, fuck, you know, so you have to live under that kind of cloud at all times. And ESL are insisting, like, talent has to, like, fly out to, like, Katowice for 60 days at a time to do this broadcast, because that's where their studio setup is. And it's and they don't want people to be going out to the events. They want them in the studio doing it all remote. So you don't even get the vibe. You can't even, like, go have dinner with the players and hear an interesting anecdote that you bring to the broadcast or an additional consideration. You're completely detached. So the ESL broadcast should be the industry-leading one, right? Because that's how they position themselves. They occupy 8% of the calendar. We'd be fucked without ESL. But their broadcast doesn't reflect their position in the industry. It's really poor, and it's, for me, it's basically held up by the talent they have.
Especially because, like, the worst thing is, like you said, they don't even give the talent freedom, mate. Like, the joke of the ESL show is the run of show is the show. You just work yourself into it, essentially. Should be the other way around. Like, the premise is when you got a great point, like you're saying, you go up now, go that later, and you break it and you go to the point you're on now. Like, ESL has that vibe of, like, fucking morning TV in the UK where it's like, well, thanks for that there, Yanko. And now I believe Fern Cotton's out of the county fair where I believe they've got a new type of almond pie. Like, what is this? Like, why are we doing a segment where, like, as you say, the way they run down the show elements is like, this is so, like, it's like you're auditioning to be on, like, American TV or something, mate. Like, this isn't an e-sport. Because I've always thought the whole premise of esports is you can pick the parts of the real world you want to bring in. And the coolest thing is, because we're a video game, you can do all your own shit and unique stuff. Like, everyone's still trying to mirror the sports broadcast. What are your thoughts on this, Maui?
I would say that there's kind of, to me right now, in the TOs that I've, seen and worked with, I think there's kind of levels to what they put into their production side, especially their desk segments. And I would say ESL is probably the most static. Blast is almost like, it's kind of static in a different way where when we're talent on it, we know what's going to come up in the desk segments very well. And that's why it looks so polished, because we have to do this long couple hours of prep work before the broadcast even starts. And we're going to know what graphics show up. But I think the middle ground, which I think Richard was trying to reach, which kind of probably reflects a little bit of, I would assume, like your experience with Turner, and that they were able to follow what you were doing for E-League, for and I think, like, again, like, I just keep kissing their ass, but I think WePlay do a really good job with it. And I again, like, not enough people are watching the broadcast, but if I talk about two players, and just because at the spur of the moment, I just think of, oh, this was a cool head-to-head, they just throw them up within 10 seconds. It's insane. Like, they put a head-to-head on the fly of that. And I've also come to them with ideas for, hey, I think this graphic would be cool, or this would be a cool idea to just kind of like make this segment a little bit different, and they just whip it up so quickly. We don't have to have an hour-long meeting. They literally just hear me say it, and then they'll just either, one, do it on the fly, or two, I tell them in the brief moments before we get on air, hey, I want to talk about this, and then the graphics ready. And so I think,
which is how it should be, by the way.
Yeah, it should be.
The reality is that we talk about this stuff like it's fucking, it's a miracle, like,
Yes.
No,
Exactly.
In this day and age, by the way, like with the tech that we have and just the skill set, we've been doing online broadcasting now in esports for well over a decade. There's just no excuse. There's no excuse for it to be this far behind. There's no excuse to not have graphics. There's no excuse to not have, like, nice transitions and stingers. There's no excuse to not have a team of people that can't augment your broadcast at the efficiency and the speed you're talking about. It makes our industry look like fucking clown shoes, when in reality, if you look at what's happening in mainstream entertainment, and in particular, talk shows and everything, the way they've had to pivot during the pandemic, they're looking at us and going, holy shit, that's a good idea. They're looking at the things we've got on Twitch and going, that's a good idea. So we should be innovating now. We shouldn't be, like, regressing. It's so fucking frustrating for me because, like I say, I think broadcasts from 2016 to 2018 are better than everything we've had since, practically across the board, with one or two exceptions in esports. So, and I just think that really fucking sucks.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.